Hi everyone, welcome to this week. We have a little bit of a hodgepodge of things, some new things that are smallish and not necessarily related, so we'll just kind of look at those. So we're going to start with dependent clauses. Dependent clauses, also known as subordinate clauses. The important thing here is they can't stand by themselves, right? So dependent clauses are clauses in that they have a verb, but they are not sentences in that they can't stand by themselves. So when I ran home, I tripped. All right, so both of these are clauses, right? I tripped is a clause, when I ran home is a clause, because they each have a verb, ran and tripped. But only one of them can be a sentence, right? So I tripped is the one that can stand by itself. All right, and that makes it an independent clause, obviously, and then we have dependent clauses. So the dependent clause is, of course, here, right, when I ran home. So you can't just say when I ran home, period, right? That is not a sentence. That doesn't make sense. So that is a dependent clause, and that's what we're going to be taking a look at in Latin. So this is just from your textbook, all right? And again, a couple examples there and a little description of that, so you can read that there. All right, so here over on the left are kind of the words that introduce dependent clauses in Latin, all right? And so you can see their definitions here. And this is just vocab, so you just need to know this. And then the categories over here are useful, but not necessary to know. They're not necessarily going to help you if you don't know what the words mean. So make sure to know the words on the left as part of vocab so that you can translate these dependent clauses. All right, beyond that, dependent clauses work no differently from any other clause or any other Latin. They're going to have the same things: subjects, verbs, objects, ablatives, adverbs, prepositional phrases, whatever it might be. The only difference is the presence of that conjunction at the beginning. All right, so in this exercise, we're going to identify the English conjunction, all right, and then a coordinating conjunction or a subordinating conjunction. And coordinate and subordinate are just different words for independent and dependent. So coordinate is the same as independent, i.e. it can stand by itself, and subordinate is the same as dependent, i.e. it cannot stand by itself. All right, so the idea here is conjunctions are things that join. So these adverbial clause markers are the dependent or subordinating conjunctions. They join these dependent clauses to the main clause or to the main sentence. Coordinate conjunctions are your most common conjunctions, like and, but, or. Those are the three big ones. And they just join two separate sentences together. So if we look at number 1, 2 of the Harati brothers have been killed, but the third won the battle. So obviously we have a clause here, and we have a clause here, and then this is our conjunction. And the important thing to note is that if these were two separate sentences, they would work fine. All right? So 2 of the Harati brothers had been killed, period. That's a sentence. That makes sense. The third won the battle, period. That's a sentence. That makes sense. So that means that this, but, is a coordinate conjunction. All right? So in other words, the way this exercise works, all right, so but is the conjunction, it's a coordinating conjunction, and the Latin is said. All right? All right, now, the place where Regulus jumped into the earth is marked in the form. So the place is marked in the form, that's one clause. All right, and then where Regulus jumped into the earth, that is another clause. And this is a good example because dependent clauses can come in the middle of a sentence. All right, now, the place is marked in the form, clause works, sentence works fine on its own. Where Regulus jumped into the earth doesn't work on its own. Excuse me. And important to note that this is not a question, right? Where here is a conjunction in the middle of a sentence rather than a question word. All right? So this is going to be a dependent, a subordinate conjunction. All right? And where, of course, is the English. And it's going to be ubi. All right? Now, I will leave the rest for you to do. All right? A few slides worth. And then what I did is I included the answers. All right? So if you want to pause here, then the answers are on the next slide. Excuse me, and there they are. All right, so as I said, dependent clauses aren't really that different. It's basically just an introduction of new vocab and a new sentence structure. Everything else pretty much works the same. All right, so the next is accusative extent of time. Last week we talked about time expressions. If you remember the ablative of time, right, obviously use the ablative with no preposition. And the important thing is that it used a time word and it answered the question when, right? So when did you go to the store? I went yesterday, or I went on the third day ago. A little awkward. The accusative extent of time, all right, is going to be the accusative, no preposition. All right, you also need a time word. And it's going to answer the question for how long. All right. So I have been running for 3 hours. For 3 hours, that's my accusative extent of time. All right. I went running on the third day of the month. On the third day, that's my ablative of time, right? When did you go running? On the third day of the month. For how long did you go running? For 3 hours. So on the third day, ablative of time, answers the question when. For 3 hours, accusative extent of time, answers the question for how long. All right. The accusative also does the same thing with space. So you can see here the same principle applies. All right. The trees were 8 feet high. All right. Technically, the trees. Actually, let me do this. Technically, the trees were tall for 8 feet. All right. Awkward in English. So we just say the trees were 8 feet high. All right. The river is a day's march away. All right. So the river is far by sort of a journey, right? By a march, iter. All right. And then it also works in degree. All right. So tantum, so much, etc. All right. Degree is not very common. Space is a little more common, but not much. Time is really the most common of the three. All right. And finally, the dative with adjectives. If you remember, the dative is most commonly translated with to or for, and there are certain adjectives that will have to or for after them. So in other words, in English, if I say he is similar to his father, all right, you should be able to figure out which the dative with the adjective is going to be. And that is going to be to his father. And the nice thing is you got to in there, at least with similar. The one thing to point out is that grammatically, similar and father have nothing to do with each other. So similar agrees with he, right? So this would be nominative masculine singular because he is nominative masculine singular. And the to his father is going to be dative because it's dependent on similar. But that's all it has to do with similar, all right? So similis patri, whoop, forgot the T. Similis patri est. All right, so he is similar to his father. All right, so this is just sort of a list of meanings of Latin adjectives that take the dative, and again, most, if not all of them, take to or for in English as well. And that makes life a little easy, all right? So in other words, as we were saying, consules nobis sunt amici. Amici agrees with consules, right? The consuls are friendly, all right? But nobis is then dependent on amici, all right? So the consuls are friendly to us, all right? So it's amici that gives nobis its grammatical function. All right, so the place was suitable, this is the next one down, for a temple. Again, locus and optus agree, and then templo is dependent on optus. All right, Romani dissimiles aliis erant. The Romans were unlike others, or the Romans were dissimilar to others, and that's where you can hear that dative coming in. Again, Romani and dissimiles agree, and aliis is dependent on dissimiles. All right, so here are this week's summatives. All right, so for the reading, you've got a paragraph. I'll go through a little bit of it with you. Romulus tracentos quam milites ad custodiam non in bello solum sed etiam in pace habuit. All right. So Romulus, right, looks like a nominative. Tracentosque. All right. So we've got the os, which is accusative, definitely. We've got a que, which is and. All right. Milites is accusative, so it looks like tracentos and milites are going to agree. All right. Ad custodiam looks like a prepositional phrase. Non in bello solum sed etiam in pace. So we've got in bello and in pace with this conjunction pair around them. So that is probably going to go together. All right, so Romulus had 300 soldiers. All right, that's for sort of his troops, his guard. Not only solum in war, but also in peace. So Romulus had 300 soldiers for his guard, not only in war, but also in peace. All right, next sentence. Ob Romulum urbs Roma valuit et quadraginta annos pacem habuit postquam illa discessit. All right, so prepositional phrase, ob and accusative, that's probably going to go together, especially since I have a nominative here. So that's going to be the subject. Valuit, there's my verb. Then I hit a conjunction, which means I sort of reset things. So quadraginta anno. So I've got accusative there. Accusative extended time looks like. Pacem is an accusative, and by the way, this is a time word, which makes it accusative extended time, versus this a non-time word, probably going to be the direct object. Habuit, verb, and then conjunction. This is one of those subordinate conjunctions we talked about. Postquam illa discessit. So subject, verb. So on account of Romulus, because of Romulus, the city of Rome was strong and had peace for 400 years. 40 years? 40 years. Quadraginta was 40. All right, after he departed/died. So because of Romulus, the city of Rome was strong and had peace for 40 years after he died. All right, I will leave the rest to you. Here's the writing. So sentences into Latin. All right, in 2 nights they will have finished the long journey. All right, so this is a time expression. This is ablative within which. All right, so no preposition. All right, will have finished. That's my future perfect. And then we just got subject and direct object. So duobus, noctibus. All right, longum, neuter, because iter is neuter. All right, and finiverit. Oh, sorry. Finiverint, because it's they. All right, so in 2 nights, duobus, noctibus, they will have finished the long journey. All right. All right, and I will leave the rest to you. All right, that is it for this week. I'll be here next week. Please email if you have any questions. Thanks.